Hey guys, I am here to get into Happiness, which is directed by Todd Solondz, released in the year 1998. And this is probably one of about the darkest comedy I've ever seen in my life. It feels like the darkest man of all just decided to wake up and decided to make this really brutal comedy, which really scars me about as much as the darkest psychological horror film possibly could, because it's so far into absurd and awkward scenarios that are uncomfortable, and they just really all kind of unfold too far in a way. Just because I think it's because the subject matter is overbearingly depressing, you could say, and it kind of manages to confront it with just a lot of shock value, but also with a lot of social commentary. And it just turns out to be a really frightening and awkward kind of atmosphere. And Todd Solondz just kind of forces you to perceive all these ways. And honestly, the effect of it feels like the equivalent of like the Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange when he's going through the Ludovico treatment, just like he's strapped in, having your eyes wide open. Cinematography just really feels frighteningly just gross and close up. And it just holds up timelessly in its power to shock. It's often a very challenging project. It often feels difficult because the atmosphere is very lonely. Like, it's very brutal. It often feels like an ultimate. It almost feels like I should not be watching this, like, in a lot of ways, in a very unique levels. But it's just really an insane film. And sometimes you look back and it's like, well, that's just so far. It's like, yeah, there's like something wicked at the deepest down depths that does find this stuff a little funny too. Because when you look at it this lens, it's like that's absolutely insane, very mind bending. It's very, yeah, just disturbing, very blunt. It's just on a unique level of blunt about itself. It feels like it's kind of like the darkest cousin of a lot of Robert Altman, Paul Thomas Anderson perspective. Just this feels anxiety inducing, uncomfortable, and characters really just, yeah, it just goes all kinds of gross sort of characters all go through all kinds of gross arcs, searching for all kinds of joy, meaning in life, and all the wrong, like, just most unfulfilling places. And the dark humor in this is just, it's timelessly disturbing. Like, it blooms with a very awkward kind of perspective, and also just a very miserable one. It just really shows that there's something unpleasant about what Todd Solondz is on to. I mean, all this projects have kind of displayed this. It kind of feels like his ultimate summation. I've also been equally stunned by Welcome to the Dollhouse, Dark Horse, and Wiener Dog. This just, he's on to something very disturbing. This is just, and all the character stories just it feels kind of just somehow a little spiritually, it just feels like it's like spiritually upsetting, you could say. That's the best way I could describe the atmosphere of this film more than anything. And also slightly kind of connects with a lot of why I love like shows. Like, I'm obsessed with The Simpsons, and I think I could see where like a lot of this is whole perspective is kind of spawned from a bit of a gross out perspective. Like, it's just like humor that just kind of goes like darker than you expect, but then it kind of like, I don't know, somehow it makes it warranted. In this case, like, The Simpsons had a lot more warmth about it. This just, by contrast, just has a lot of commentary about it, which just ends up just making this it just feels like a very groundbreaking project, honestly, like in a lot of ways with time. So I remember seeing this when I was like 21, and I was just like, man, there were so many days where I was like, I'm afraid to leave my house because this is so disturbing. Like, and it just, now it's just like, maybe the idea of it, a lot of it is to like look at this and be more like, in Clockwork Orange also kind of is always giving me this communication of it's preferable to be nihilistic around this stuff rather than possessed by it, you could say, or dominated by it in any sort of way. And maybe that's perhaps why a lot of these films can have a relevance about it. A lot of these characters, because it's like a lot of dark depths. It's like, yeah, like, it just dares to make. It's like it's just trying to make you relate to the worst things possible. It literally is doing that. It's just really anxiety inducing. It really just feels it's just going insane in a lot of ways. And all of, yeah, like I said, it's really well paced. I mean, all the stories really are just appear to be ultimately. It's really shocking. It's like it focuses on all of the, like, just the detail oriented on all the most awkward, gross things in life, basically. Um, I think this really just goes. A lot of these just stories just go further than you would ever expect it to. It's very upsetting and disturbing, but also just very strongly fascinating by how it's proceeding all of this, and just again finding the comedy perspective on it. That's very groundbreaking. And yeah, I mean, it's just nothing quite like the darkness. I mean, it really just feels like the darkest end of a lot of like '90s influence. I reflect back on a lot of like the '90s just feels like a uniquely, there's a dark place for it. It's just like, wow, it feels like this film just actually speaks to all of that. And I've had the conversations with friends I've watched. It's like this film kind of does feel like it's like unraveling a satanic force in itself, the way it depicts all of this. And like, it's just like kind of one where it's like I don't need to watch all the things. I think you'll never forget what you're seeing in this one. Truly, the way it paces out. Yeah, it's an evil kind of perspective within here, but it's like very groundbreaking in how it perceives just the darkest of comedy that you can possibly imagine. All the subject matter you just would never expect. I mean, yeah, like it really goes far with a lot of this stuff. But it's not. And this is one I'll say not recommended for everyone. It's really not for the faint of heart. It really is a lot. But if you're up for just extremely disturbing emotions, it's extremely fascinating at taking you there. That's the best way to describe it. So, yeah, take that for what this is a big time for what it's worth.